Hey guys, Jeremy here from menzigaming.net. Excited to be bringing you a video today in preparation for the Terracon event that's occurring next week on the 11th and 12th of June. Terracon is held at Napier, which is a small town on the border of South Australia and Victoria. It's an 1850 event using the curved community comp system. It's also an ITC event, which is exciting. We've seen Australia kind of embrace ITC in the last few months. Over this video and the next couple, I'm going to be doing kind of list spotlights on some videos that people have been, kind enough to send in. The first couple of lists that I've received have both been battle companies. So I thought I'd kind of do like a battle company focus video. I'll do it over a couple of different parts. So the first part, I'll look at just battle company in general. Why is it prevalent in the meta? What's strong about battle company? How to kind of verse against battle company, like what considerations to have. And then I'm going to look at two lists that have been sent in. The first one is Adam Napier's Iron Hands Gladius, and the second one is Scott Devall's Imperial Fists Gladius. So let's just start with kind of general principles of battle company. So I've got a list of kind of talking points here that we'll kind of go through. So the first kind of thing I wanted to mention was, for those who don't know what battle company is, it consists of the two demi companies with a mandatory auxiliary, which is very often the 10th scout company. So you can kind of see here the list of what you need. I guess the most important thing is you need 6 tactical squads, 2 from this following list, which are very often people pick 2 attack bikes, 2 Devastator squads or Centurion Devastators, very often the double Dev squad. And then you have some options, so some 0 to 1s as well. So in a Gladius, you can have up to 2 Dreadnoughts, up to 2 command squads, and you have to have a captain and chaplain in a Gladius. As far as the auxiliary formations go, the 10th Company's task force is 3 to 5 units of scouts. So scouts or scout bikes, and then 0 to 1 Sergeant Tellian. Obviously, you can only take Tellian if you have Ultramarines. And there's some like little bonuses as well with this formation. For example, the scouts get stealth until they move or assault, and the scout bikes benefit from that rule as well, but have to take cluster mines in this formation. So anyway, let's get started and we'll discuss the command benefits as we kind of go. So one of the biggest benefits of the battle company is just the MSU of the army. The army has so many units in it. Often by virtue of the free vehicles, which we'll discuss later, but there are so many units in the army that you just saturate the board with units and with firepower. So one benefit of multiple small units is that there's no center of gravity, which often means that like an opponent, when they look at your army, will kind of look at a focal point. It might be a Wraith Knight, it might be a big Death Star, it might be like kind of like a cluster of kind of things on the board, and they'll say, if I can beat this, if I can destroy that little bastion of stuff, little bulwark of units, I'll win the game. So you kind of give your own opponent kind of like a discernible win condition if you have a center of gravity. Whereas when you've got kind of pure MSU, everything's homogeneous, everything's kind of spread, your opponent doesn't really have a way to win, an easily discernible way to win. They have to grind you out in kind of the long game. It also doesn't give your opponent necessarily any good target. Some targets will be better than others, but when you've just got a kind of line of Rhinos, Razorbacks, tactical squads, some combat squad of Devastators, small units of bikes, there's nothing that's like amazing to kind of shoot your wad of kind of 20 grab shots at, is there? So that is definitely a powerful element of battle company. Further to that, kind of I touched on that just then, and I've discussed this in previous Breaking the Meta videos in the past, is that when you have MSU, you benefit from kind of like you will often get overkilled when opponents eliminate your units, which means that you kind of soak up damage through having phantom bodies. So it's a concept that the easiest way to explain it is just to kind of say, if you have a unit of 5 tactical Marines and your opponents shoot you with a bunch of bolters and kill 10 Marines, like you roll your saves and you fail 10 saves, then you had 5 Phantom Marines that absorbed kills that don't exist. So you lose your 5 tacticals, but you technically lost 10 unsaved wounds. So there's this overkill there that your opponent achieved. So if you had a full 10-man tactical squad, you would have lost the whole squad. But you only had a 5-man squad. So you still lost the whole squad, but you somehow got extra value from your opponents overkilling you. So having MSU is really good at kind of, in some ways you evoke overkill, but in other ways that your opponent can't play around it. Like they can't do anything. All they can do is shoot it with what they have available. And similarly, when you are doing the shooting with this kind of army, you have a lot of like very small increments of damage. Like you could call it like granular damage, like very small amounts of damage that you're outputting sequentially, that you can kind of designate so that you minimize your own overkill of other units. So you kind of just shoot things until they die. Like if there's one Marine left in a squad, rather than have to dedicate a whole other tactical squad to it, you can just shoot a Stormbolter from your drop pod at it. And then you shoot another Stormbolter from the drop pod, and then it dies. And then, there might be 2 Marines, so you shoot an assault cannon at it. Like there's just, you can output really efficient, reliable damage with a battle company. So its efficiency is really, really hard to explain until you kind of see the way it's operating. Doctrines, a Demi company does gain benefit from doctrines, so this applies to the Gladius as well. Doctrines are really effective. It allows you to generate a bit of an alpha strike with your battle company, where in the first turn or two, sometimes you won't use it in necessarily turn 1, but you'll be able to pop the Devastator Doctrine so that your Devastators get really good efficiency and your tacticals benefit as well, etc. And then in turn 2 or 3, when your Marines are bailing out and really forming a real, powerful line in the middle of the board, you can pop the Tactical Doctrine. It also works in combat, which is really effective because sometimes you'll get assaulted, and you get assaulted with Marines that are, re-rolling. It depends on like the way the turns are sequenced, but re-rolling Overwatch, re-rolling re-rolling 1, sorry, but it depends. Well, if they're tacticals, they'll be re-rolling everything. So re-rolling the Overwatch, re-rolling to hit in combat, like it kind of does snowball. So that's a very powerful element of Battle Company as well. There's a lot of free vehicles. So when you take your Demi stuff, so you have like this whole, this list of stuff you're taking. Anything in a Gladius from this, each of the Demi companies that can take a dedicated transport takes it for free. So if you kind of look at the options here, you've got a command squad, 3 tactical squads, that's 4, 5, 6, 7 free transports available potentially per Demi. So if you go for a Battle Gladius, it's possible to have 14 free transports. Now, that doesn't always happen. The reason being that people generally avoid the assault squads. They often go with the attack bikes. So you're losing 2 often. So you're down to 12. And then similarly, often people don't take their full allotment of dreadnoughts as well. But it is possible to generate up to 14 free transports per per Gladius. And they can't all be Razorbacks, because obviously dreadnoughts can't board Razorbacks. But you can account for it. You can get up to about 600 points of free vehicles, 500 to 600 points in kind of community comp meta games where we see comp allotted to the amount of free vehicles you take. People generally kind of go between 8 and 10, so they'll be generating 300 to 400, 450 points sometimes of free vehicles, which is pretty immense in an 1850 game. To be able to get 450 points free means that you're just at a massive advantage in terms of just the amount of stuff you have on the board. So I think that kind of speaks for itself. The next point I kind of had was objective secured spam. Everything in the Battle Demi is objective secured. So it's a tremendous amount of saturation. The ICs are objective secured. That's quite an unusual thing. Drop pods over a phenomenal amount of like your drop pods purchased for Devastator squads, drop pods purchased for assault squads potentially are all objective secured. The assault squads themselves, or these attack bikes, objective secured, and dreadnoughts as well. So often opponents will forget. They just won't understand. They won't kind of be able to reconcile the fact that they have to confront a whole board of OBSEC. So come turn 5 or 6, when the game's kind of wrapping up, anything left on the board very often is just objective secured. So that kind of those last minute shenanigans that play like Eldar players with jet bikes, or people that will kind of like make that last ditch play to get their objective secured stuff on objectives, they'll do that sure, but they're hitting OBSEC themselves, so it'll just be a non-contested, like it'll be a non-awarded VP. So often Battle Company will just, they'll saturate every objective, and opponents might be able to contest some of them, but the rest of the objectives Battle Company will get. So often accounts to an extreme, like a overall net gain for Battle Company in terms of objectives. Let's look at the cons. Obviously, we've kind of gone through some very powerful strengths of Battle Company. The cons are that there are a lot of available kill points. If you're playing a mission, any of the kind of hybrid mission types, which a lot of tournaments are running internationally, then often kill points are capped at about 8. And in those tournaments where kill points are capped at 8, it's almost guaranteed that Battle Company will give up the full 8. It's even in matches they'll win decisively, opponents will still manage to pop rhinos and kill tactical squads and generate a lot of kill points. I mean, it's not guaranteed, but it is definitely a deficit. They've got a lot of easy to get kill points. Similarly, there's a lot of redundancy as well in Battle Company, and often redundancy can be a positive thing. For example, in the case of, let's say, an army like Eldar, you kind of want to have lots of scatter lasers in another army. You want to be able to say, okay, I've got some scatter lasers on this unit of bikes, I've got scatter lasers on this unit of bikes, and I've got some war walkers as well with scatter lasers, because it's such an effective, versatile weapon. And the same can be said to an extent for something like a bolt gun. But the problem with Battle Company are there are so many bolt guns that gets to the point where your bolt guns don't really have stuff to kill anymore, or you want to kill something but bolt guns aren't good at killing it. So that's where there is such a case that there is just too much redundancy in Battle Company. Furthermore, a lot of their specialist weapons, like plasmas in tactical squads, things like that, are linked to the fact there are bolters in those units. So if you want to, for example, shoot that plasma gun in a tactical squad at some Terminators, which is a very good target for a plasma gun, you also have to throw 4 bolt guns into the same Terminator squad, which is a suboptimal targeting kind of choice. So there's a bit of suboptimal targeting associated with this kind of the way in which specialist weapons are taken within the squad. So even within this redundancy, if you want to specialize, there's often kind of a bit of an overlay of kind of like you're just wasting shots. So there is that sense of wastage. Obviously with any kind of list that's at the top of the metagame, that's very powerful, that's very kind of anticipated, then it becomes predictable because people kind of get used to it. And Battle Company, because it has so many like mandatory choices we can see over here, when you verse a Battle Company, you keep seeing the same things come up. So people have kind of learned how to play them. They kind of know what to see and know what to expect. That doesn't necessarily make it an easy matchup, but it does make it predictable. And in any kind of game, like a collectible card game like Magic or Hearthstone, or a kind of an RTS like StarCraft 2, when there is a popular strategy, people will practice to beat it. So people will, sideboard in cards in Magic to deal with the top decks. People in StarCraft 2 will scout for things like if there's a specific build, like a proxy gate is really common. People will start scouting for things that you might not expect that level of preparation, but people will prepare for the top build. So the same could be said for in 40k for Battle Company. People are kind of cued into what they need to do to be able to beat it. And we can kind of discuss that a little in a second as well, like how I think you should play against Battle Company. Another con of Battle Company is a lack of AP2. Often the AP2, as I said, is in units of tactical squads. Devastator squads have AP2, but there's not that many of them. And there's just not there's not many options if you look at this list at really, really effective kind of saturation of AP2. Your best bet is probably something like a command squad that can kind of operate in the same way that like a Stern Guard squad could with like a drop. So command squad drops maybe and your kind of Centurion Devastator squads are probably your best form of reliable AP2. And obviously, command squads even on bikes as well as things like your multi-melter attack bikes can mount things like multi-melters here, and then you got potential grav guns on the command squad on bike. So it's possible, but it's just often a low volume of AP2. So for the last couple of minutes of this video, we'll just go through some like focuses of Battle Company. The first one is people has been in Melbourne, well, not so much Melbourne, in Australia, because we've had players from interstate as well run this. Grav Company's been really popular. So by Grav Company, we mean your rhinos mounted with tactical squads and grav cannons inside them. And they could also be in Devastator squads as well, obviously. The premise is that they shoot out of the hatch, so that you've got these protected grav cannons with a big 24-inch kill zone. Obviously toting their really powerful 5-shot grav cannons with grav amps. It's good because they're protected. And by protected, we mean you need to kill the rhino in order to access the tactical squad that's shooting from inside. Then the player will bail out their marines, and you need to kill the 4 tactical marines that will be screening this last kind of grav cannon. So it's very effective because the most valuable part of the squad is the last thing to die. So they are very much a pillbox. And it's good because it plugs the AP2 weakness in the list. And it also just grav cannons are a tremendously powerful weapon. And they're pretty good value for 35 points as well. Downsides of these grav kind of rhinos are they're immobile because of the salvo rule, and in kind of as an extension of that, you want to be able to scout them. So in community comp scouting, your dedicated transports is costed via white scars, and also a lot of people are taking things like servo skulls and infiltrators to be able to deny a scout. So you can kind of play around their 24-inch rim range, and it's worth noting that the 24 inches is measured from the hatch. So if you have a 24-inch weapon, for example, an assault cannon, you can target the rhino. You can stay at a range where your gun perhaps can target the rhino, but the grav cannon's hatch can't target you. So there is ways to manipulate that 24-inch range of the grav cannons. The next kind of archetypal focus is the Razor Company, where people are kind of focusing on those maximizing the free value of the transports to get the 55-point Razorbacks. So this is good because you're getting the most value out of the free vehicles, and also because you can mount pretty effective configurations. Assault Cannon is an extremely versatile weapon. I personally think you're looking at assault cannons are one of the better weapons in the game due to their versatility. Lots of output, often twin linked. Also quite good because of the ability to rend. So they can threaten things like AV-13 and AV-14 vehicles. And AP-4 is obviously good as well. So just a very powerful weapon that I think is extremely versatile and because they're twin linked on the Razorbacks, they become a bit of an anti-air option as well, due to strength 6 and re-rolling to hit on 4 shots. Is a pretty good. It's pretty good at making flies jink at least, and actually threatening them as well. The downside of the Razorbacks are that they're the same defensively, the same stats as a Rhino, so they're easy to kill, so to speak. And the problem is that unlike the grav Rhinos with the tactical squads, the grav cannons in the tactical squads, the grav cannons are the most protected part of the squad, but the Razorback is the exterior of this squad. So it's the first thing to die when targeted. So you've got a lot of points wrapped up. And by points, I mean you have to pay 20 points to upgrade the weapon. You have your most powerful part of the squad as the outside of it. So it's kind of like it doesn't really make sense from that perspective. So the vehicles become the primary target, and opponents will just kind of pop vehicles and leave the tactical squads because they're not as threatening without the grav cannons in them. The other kind of archetype that you'll see, the focus of a battle company, is people using their command squad slot to make a command squad and bike star, mainly because it's the only way to kind of create a star from the Gladius. Often when you purchase a Gladius, you don't have enough points left really to ally in it, kind of like a Death Star kind of focus, like the kind of basis for a Death Star. So for that reason, often players that want to run a kind of a bully unit in this list will lean on that command squad on bikes. It's good because it makes effective use of the mandatory HQ slots. often your captain and chaplain in a battle company will kind of float around aimlessly, trying to find a way to contribute. But if you put them both in the same unit, on a unit of in bikes, with bikes themselves, they become mobile and effective. It's good because it takes pressure off the MSU elements by kind of confronting your opponent. It's a distraction. They can deal with things that, if your opponent's got a unit that is effectively dealing with your MSU, you can confront them and lock them up. However, a deficit of Command Squad in the context of Gladius is that you have a low volume of ICs because you're locked kind of to these two. It is possible to get into Tech Marine if you're taking the Armored Task Force as your auxiliary, but the downside of this whole situation is that the ICs are not optimal. Like Captain, Chaplains are not optimal ICs. You often don't have enough points to really beef them out as much as you would want. So that is a downside, and also you don't get the that access to kind of the premium ICs that Space Marines have, which is namely the Librarian. Librarian's one of the best ICs in the game, so you can't really take those in a Gladius, which really hurts for multiple reasons. Because obviously Libby's, in terms of combat, they have similar stats to captains, but they have the force weapons, and they also give those psychic buffs, which are really good. So I think that's about it, guys. The only other thing I kind of wanted to mention was that often people run a lot of pods, like just totally spam drop pods with Gladius, but in community comp we don't really see that due to the costings on the cumulative costings on pods. And I guess before we go to the lists, I guess I'll just say some general kind of ways to confront Battle Company. I'd say the best way to do it would be to just have a lot of patience and poise. Don't just get overwhelmed by the amount of units you're versing. Kind of look at things logically and systematically and just methodically kill what needs to kill in a kind of an order that makes sense based on what objectives you're trying to achieve. It's kind of good to just clear portions of the battlefield. By doing that, you can kind of reliably take pressure off parts of your force and also kind of clear Eternal War objectives that you actually can manageably take. It doesn't make sense to just smatter firepower over their whole army and leave them over the whole board. You kind of want to eliminate them off parts of the board systematically, and often just kind of force the battle company to make kind of plays that kind of similar to like the way a Tau army would, desperation plays, make them need to kill stuff. Don't kind of get engaged in these kind of non-committal engagements. If you're non-committal, then they'll just win through attrition. You need to kind of force them to commit. And then if they fail through lack of, for example, their weaknesses such as a lack of AP2 and too much redundancy, you kind of force those weaknesses. And if you put them to the test and they fail, then you can pick up a win through bigger multi-assaults and things like that. So anyway, so let's move on to part 2, where I'll discuss Adam's list. So thanks guys for watching so far. Cheers.